Do you ever feel like your Excel spreadsheets are running your life and not the other way around? Well, what if I told you that there are 4 free Excel plugins already built right into your Excel that can make Excel work smarter so you don't have to work harder? Trust me when I say these plugins are true game changers that can save you 10, 20, or even 30 hours every single month. And it's all coming up right in this video. Welcome to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Mike. I'm a senior finance leader, and over the last decade, I've spent more than 15,000 hours in Excel. So I've really been around the block with a lot of the functionality. Now, for the majority of that time, I avoided Excel plugins and I just wanted to use what was built right in, what was right there in front of me. What I didn't realize was there were all these great plugins built right into Excel that could save a tremendous amount of time in the system I already knew, no downloads, no budget required, and they were easy to learn. And I am so mad at myself for how long I put off learning them. So today, I want you to stop putting it off or get started on your journey by walking you through 4 of my favorite plugins without spending a cent. Definitely stick around to the end because all 4 of these plugins will add value for any finance professional, regardless your role, and I don't want you to miss a thing. So with that, let's get started. Let's talk about 4 free Excel plugins that are going to transform your workday. These things save me at least 20 hours a week, and I didn't spend a dime on them. Now, if you haven't used any of these tools, you have to make sure that they are turned on. Again, they're totally free, built right into Excel, but aside from Power Query, which is always on, Power Pivot, Solver, and Analysis ToolPak are usually disabled by default in Excel. So let's take a look at how to do that. We're going to go to File and Options. Once I have Options open, we want to go down to Add-ins. Now what you'll see, and I already have them turned on, but I'll show you anyways. So Power Pivot is a COM add-in. So what you would do for that is go to COM add-ins go, and you want to make sure Power Pivot is checked. Once we've turned on our COM add-ins, then we'll want to turn on our Excel add-ins, which is Analysis and Solver. We'll hit go. And here you want to make sure Analysis ToolPak and Solver add-in is checked. There are some features for VBA with Analysis ToolPak you can use. That's outside the scope of this video, but do know those are there. And now everything is turned on. So where do you find it? Well, when you turn on Power Pivot, you'll get a new tab at the top called Power Pivot. Those are those features there. For Power Query, again, that's always here, and it's in this Get and Transform Data section. And then you'll have a new section on the Data tab for Data Analysis and Solver. If you're enjoying this video, make sure to check out my weekly newsletter, Finance Automation Insider. The link is going to be down below in the description, and if you sign up, I will also send you my free guide to 15 5-minute automations that you can get started with today. Let's talk about our first plugin, which is also honestly my favorite. I said, some people save the best for last. I'm saving the best for first. This is Power Query, which allows you to manage data on the back end. And of all these tools, probably has saved me the most time. Power Query allows you to clean and consolidate messy data sets with ease. It allows you to automate repetitive tasks because as you give it the data cleaning steps, it saves them and it will repeat the same steps every time fresh data comes in. You can save hours on report preparation because your data is automated. With a single click of a button, all of the data transformation steps will run automatically, pulling in fresh data and updating your reports. And it's perfect for combining data from multiple sources into one spreadsheet. No more need for SQL, no more need for coding. It's going to do it all right in Power Query, all the same functionality with just a few clicks of the button. Let's start working with Power Query. So first I want to introduce you to our data sets. I've got 2 data sets here for you. The first one is a bunch of data from some coffee shops in Manhattan. Let's see how many lines we've got here. I wanted to make sure we got a really big one. All right, so we've got almost 150,000 lines of data, and it's just a lot of transaction data for a coffee shop. The thing is that a lot of times data will come in from the point of sale system and it's not in a usable format the way that the management team likes to look at it. This is a perfect example. There's all these product types, product categories. What do we really need to care about? It's probably not all of these columns. The second thing, we've got a mapping table that I've set up. So on the first tab of the mapping table, we've got the different product types and how management wants to look at it. So it's a lot less, it's a smaller list, and it's really how they run the business and how different managers are responsible for the business. There's also time of day, so the data is pulling in from the point of sale system by hour, but we really treat our customers differently during each section of the day, morning, lunchtime, afternoon, evening, and customers have different behaviors, and we want to be able to track those behaviors. So those are the 2 mapping tables that we're going to use. Now let's open up a fresh and clean Excel file. All right, nothing like a fresh, clean Excel file. So here's the coolest part if you're not familiar with Power Query. If you go to the Data tab and you see this Get and Transform Data section, that's Power Query. It's been right here in front of you this entire time. Totally free, ready to go. I didn't do anything. This is a normal version of Office 365. It's just right there. Don't believe me? Pause the video and go check. I am sure you'll find it's there. This is the first step. Remember we talked about get data, transform data, load data. This is where we're going to go get our data. Now there's a lot of different options. So I can come down here. Most commonly, you'll probably be using pulling in from text CSV for large data sets from an Excel workbook. Again, you can do PDFs. You can connect directly to your company's databases if your policies will allow for that. A lot of companies don't. But regardless, you can download, you can also come down and get stuff from the web. Whatever you need to do, it's here. One note I do want to make is if you have data in your Excel workbook, like if I had a table here, you have to hit this From Table Range button. You're not going to find that in the dropdown. So let's go ahead and get our data. So I've got an Excel workbook, and we're going to go pull that in. All right. We're going to pull in our coffee shop sales. So now the first one's going to come up. So listed here, you'll see every tab in the workbook and tables. So if you define table names, those will be here, and then also all the tabs. In this case, I only have the data that I need on the transaction tab, so I'm just going to pull that right in. You've got two options down here. You can go to load or you can go to transform data. If I go to transform data, I'm going to open up the Power Query editor. If I load, I'm going to pull it in. I'm not going to go to the editor yet, and that's what we're going to do because I want to pull in another data set. So we're going to go load, and almost always it's safer to use load to, and I'm going to show you why. So for the most part, when you pull data in, you don't want to pull it into the worksheet because you want to keep the worksheet small and performing fast. We just want to create a connection. What this is going to do is it's going to create a mini data cube. You're going to build your own mini data cube, and Excel's only going to go query the data that you need, and it's going to make everything run a lot faster. So we'll hit OK. And then you'll see the query and connection window pop up, and this is a list of every data set that you've connected to. All right, now that pulled in, we're going to go pull in our other one. All right, and we're going to open mapping table, and we're going to import this in the same way. The only difference here is we have two different tables we want to pull in, category and time of day. So we select multiple items, we check both, and then again, I highly recommend using load to just for safety. And we'll pull that into the data model. You'll see we now have 3 data sources because each tab is its own data source. So now we're going to go ahead and open Power Query. So to open the Power Query editor, we're going to go to Get Data, and we're going to hit right here to launch the Power Query editor. This is the Power Query editor, and there's a lot of functionality in here. I'd say I use probably 10 to 20% of it. You can experiment with features. You can even go in and start, doing really complicated things and coding your own transformations, but I'm going to show you the basics of what you need to know to get running, and this will be 80% of what you need to use for anything in finance. So first of all, down here is the window. This is where we're going to see the data we've selected. So I'll just pick the transaction data. So you'll see here's all the data. It's just a preview. Again, it's never pulling in the full data set to save space. And then all of my steps are listed here. We'll go through that more in a moment. So these are the steps of the transformation. And I can come over here and select any of my queries. On the Home tab, you have the basics, the most common. So starting from left to right, over here you can refresh the preview if it's changed. You can choose, add, remove columns, do the same with rows here. You can sort and filter the data set. You can go through split columns, you can group. The grouping is really powerful. Let's say you have these like 20 columns we want. If you condense the columns, it'll start to aggregate the data at those levels, and you can significantly reduce the data set. Just as an example, let's say you've got quarters or months and you just want to have the years, right? If it's quarters, you can literally cut your data set down to a quarter of the size. If it's months to years, you can cut it down to a 1/12 of the size. Super cool. If your headers didn't pull in, you can flip the first row to be headers, you can change values, and just like using SQL, but a lot easier, you can merge queries. That's where you take something like a mapping table we're going to do and merge it in, or you can append queries. That's if you have two identical data sets, then you just kind of add them together. So merging goes this way, and then appending goes that way. And then all the way over to the right, you can pull in sources if you want to do that. If you need to pull in any additional data, you can do that here.
Transform is going to just give you a lot more options of the basic transformation you saw on the first page. A couple of really powerful ones. We already talked about group. You have functions in here like transpose. You have replace values in here. You can pivot or unpivot columns. So let's say someone gave you a table and you have the months across the top, but you want those months to go into the rows so the whole data set is just one column of numbers. You can do that here. Super easy. Boy, did I spend a lot of time doing that earlier in my career. There's also a lot of different math functions, formatting functions. So we can come in here, let's say you wanted to divide by 1,000. Here's all your math here, all kinds of different things you can do, absolute value, powers, great stuff. And then columns, this is where you can add in calculations before you ever go into the file. So a couple of really powerful ones you can build from examples. You can build a custom column where you have to write out the code. Do note it is different than regular Excel formulas. There's a lot of resources on both my website and online for that. And then there's conditional columns. This allows you to write out true-false statements with as many true-false statements as you want. Goodbye nested if functions. And then again, just some stuff we saw before, some math, some different things that you could do. And view just is a lot of functions to share, how you want to see the editor built up. So let's get started with our first transformation. So we've got the data pulled in, right? So the first thing we want to do is we want to merge in our mapping tables. So I'm going to hit merge queries. Now my preference, I like to leave the individual data sets separate, and I create a new one, and that's the file that I'm going to import back into my file as the data set. I often have to email workbooks out, and it's just a lot more comfortable, faster, safer if I pull in the core data that I need so people can pivot right out of it. So we're going to go here and we're going to hit merge queries as new. If you wanted to do it in one, you just hit merge queries, but we're going to make a new one. Okay, so this is, you're going to select the columns that you want to align. So the first thing I want to do is category. And I've built my mapping table on product type. There's that. Now we're going to open the category mapping. You'll see here's product type. All right, and then it's going to pull this in. I'm not going to get into fuzzy matching in this video. That's if you don't have perfect matches. These are perfect matches because these are the basics. I will have an advanced course coming later. That'll be a lot of help for things like that. All right, now we're going to pull it in. So if you scroll over to the right, you'll see that it's been added here, but you have to expand it because if you have a lot of mapping columns, you have to tell Power Query what you want to pull in. In this case, I just want to pull in the mapping itself. Cool, so now we have our category. This didn't get a great name, so we're going to rename it. This is going to be category mapped. Well, if I could type, it'd be category mapped. All right, we're going to go category mapped, and you'll see when I expanded the category and I renamed it, it's saving all the steps. If I go back to source, you're going to see it's just the original pull in here, and then as I expand the category, rename the columns, you can go back and adjust all of your steps. All right, so now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to pull in our time of day. So let's go back here, we're going to merge our queries again. This time I can hit just merge queries because I have my new query. We're going to select our hour, which is how our mapping table is built. Here's our time of day. Hit OK, and then we're going to repeat that same step where we expand it. All right, and there's our time of day. So now we're going to group this data set down to kind of the core information that we need. All right, so we're going to go to group by. You will almost always be using advanced. I can't think of a time I've ever used basic. Advanced lets you pull in as many of these as you want to. We're going to start off with our new grouping. So we're going to have time of day. We're going to have the category mapped. We're going to pull in, we want the store location. And then we need to pull in our revenue as the value field. So this is going to be revenue. We're going to sum that, and we're going to sum revenue. All right, and now let's see what our new file looks like. There we go. So now we just have the time of day, the category, the store location, and the revenue, and this is the main analysis that we're going to do. So let's go ahead and pull that in. So we're going to go close and load 2, and this time we are going to add it to the worksheet. We don't need to add it to the data model because all the data is already in there. So we're just going to pull this in, and this is going to be the data set that we work with. So now our data set's been pulled in. You'll see it's a table. We can of course change that name if we want to have a little bit better file hygiene, but this is the table.
Have any questions so far? go ahead and drop them down in the comments. I read and respond to every single one, and I'm more than happy to help you out. Our second Excel plugin is Power Pivot. This is a data modeling tool that allows you to do calculations before they ever get into your spreadsheet. Say goodbye to 10 nested if functions, say goodbye to index match and VLOOKUP, say goodbye to multi-step calculations. All of that can be solved with Power Pivot's incredible calculation language. It can handle massive data sets without slowing down Excel because it's going to process and calculate before it ever comes into your spreadsheet. Just like Power Query, it can integrate data from multiple sources and create connections between them. You can leverage Power Pivot and the advanced pivot tables to create interactive dashboards, simplifying your reports. And again, you can streamline all of your calculations and automate the calculations by putting them in. Whereas if you're in Excel and you have to drag down a bunch of calculations or manually enter it, there's a chance things get changed. But Power Queries can do all those calculations on the back end before it ever gets into your spreadsheet.
So I've got 3 data sets that we're going to use today. Our goal is to calculate the revenue for different categories for a coffee shop. But the problem is the data is living in different places. So here we have the number of transactions or times different products were sold, when they were sold, all that great stuff. So we have the transactions, but we don't have the prices. The prices are sitting in this other one called price. So we have all of our prices over here. And then if we go to our mapping table, this is going to tell us the categories and the time of day, which is how management likes to track this. And again, they're sitting in 3 different places. So the first thing we need to do is we need to take our data and add it to a data model, okay? So now that I've shown you these, I'm going to close the workbook, and we're going to open up a new one and pull this data in. We're going to pull this data in using Power Query. If you haven't had a chance to learn Power Query, you'll see the basics here, but go ahead and watch a video that I'll link right here that goes in depth into Power Query in just a few minutes. All right, so we've got our brand new Excel workbook, and we're going to go ahead and pull the data in. You can find Power Query right here, and this is where we're going to pull the data in. All 3 files I showed you are Excel. Now we can pull all kinds of things in, but we're going to use Excel in this case, and we're going to pull in our 3 files. All right, so here's our coffee shop sales. We'll go ahead and import that. I want to pull in my transaction table. And I'm going to load to, and I want to click load to because I want to make sure I add this to the data model. And I only need a connection. The data model is what Power Pivot will work on. Power Query can pull it into your workbook. It can pull it a lot of different places. I want to pull it into the data model so that we can work with it in Power Pivot. All right, so that's our transactions. Now we're going to go get our product pricing. And if you want to transform the data, and again, there's a great video on this, if you want to transform the data, you would do that in Power Query. You can do that before you get in, but we're just going to work in Power Pivot because this is all about speed. All right, and then last, we're going to pull in our mapping table. Here we want to select multiple options. We want to have both of these available. So now that we've got our data in, we're going to go and open up Power Pivot. All right, so here's our Power Pivot table here, and there's not a ton of options, and because it is super easy to use. So first of all, you can click Manage. This is going to open up the data model. We'll do that in a second. Here's where you can create measures and KPIs. Again, these are the calculations that you're going to be able to pull out. Same with KPIs. If you have any tables in here, you can just add them straight into the data model, and then you can also detect relationships, and sometimes Power Pivot will find them themselves. But we're going to go ahead and click the data model button and open this up. So now we've got our Power Pivot window opened up. You'll see that all of our data is pulled in here. So here's all the tables that I showed you earlier. They're available right on the bottom. On the home table, you can get additional data if you want to. You can generate a pivot table straight from here. And if you go to the design, this is where you can do most of what we'll do today with calculations and relationships. There are a few things on the advanced tab, but again, that's outside the scope of this video. That'll be an advanced video later on. So the first thing we want to do is we want to create relationships between the tables. Now there's two ways to do that. There's the slightly more complex way with more detail, but there's also a faster way that I'm going to show you. So you can click the create relationship button here and do it by linking up the tables, but there's a faster, better way that I like to do it. And that's by coming to view and clicking this diagram view button right here. The diagram view is going to open up our tables. Okay, we see them all here. And this is going to let us link them up right here. So I'm going to open this up a little bit. So now all we have to do is drag the matching attribute from one to the other where they match. So we're going to take product ID and connect it to product ID. All right, and you see the link has been created. So we're going to go ahead and link column 1, which we know is our product category, even though it's not labeled, over to product category. You see the relationship's been created there. All right, and then lastly, we just want to take time of day, or hour rather, and we're going to connect hour to hour. And now all of our relationships are set up. If you're enjoying the video so far, I would really appreciate if you would take a second and hit that like button. It really helps me out as I try to create better content. And also, if you haven't already, I would really appreciate if you subscribe to the channel. I post a brand new video every single Monday, and I don't want to make you miss a single one of our unfiltered finance videos. So now I'm going to go ahead and insert a pivot table. The trick is you want to make sure that you insert it from the data model. So where you would normally just hit the button or select table range, you want to make sure that you click from data model. We're going to put this on the existing worksheet, and now you use it just like a regular pivot table, except in the background, all of this extra data is being accumulated and calculated for you. So now that we've got our pivot table inserted, you'll see that all of the 4 columns are here. Now, this may look just like a regular pivot table, but the really cool thing is you can pull data in from any of the related tables, and if you've created a relationship, it's going to automatically connect that and let you pull in values from anywhere. But what we're still missing is revenue, because we've got our prices in one place and our transaction quantity in another. So this is where we're going to use a DAX formula to bring that all together in one place without having to do any calculations straight in our Excel workbook. This is when you can say goodbye to things like VLOOKUP, XLOOKUP, SUMIFs, all that stuff you can do right in Power Pivot. So to create a DAX formula, we're going to go up to Measures, and we're going to hit New Measure. Now, there's a lot of different formulas available in here. You'll see a whole list. I'm going to have some resources on the blog. I'll put that down in the comment. Make sure to go check that out. But you can also just go through these and kind of see what each one does. In this case, we're going to use a function called SUMX. It's SUMX because it's reiterative, and that means that it's going to go through and do this calculation at every single row in the table, not just sum the entire total. Just like in Excel, it tells us what it needs. The first thing it needs is the table. We want to do this calculation in the transactions table. Then we need to put in an expression, and this is where we're going to multiply our quantity times our price. So for the first one, the quantity is right here, and then we're going to multiply that by our price. But how do we pull that in? Because price isn't in this table. Well, we use a function called related, and it's going to say for each of these product IDs where we have a quantity, pull in the price. So we're going to call related, and this is an easy formula. It's just the column you want to pull from, and we've already linked these two up with product ID. So we'll go ahead and close that. We'll hit enter. And there's our revenue just like that. And now we can go ahead, we're going to pull in our time of day. I want to make sure we don't have any filters on here so we can see everything. So we've got our time of day pulled in. We're going to go ahead and pull in our product category, and there you go. So measure 1 again is our revenue right here, and it's all being calculated by multiplying the quantity times the price at every single level. There's just so many different ways you can use Power Pivot, including, you can do multi-step calculations. The possibilities are endless, all with this framework that I've showed you. Don't forget that just like with regular pivot tables, you can use this any way you want. You can add in slicers for filtering. You can go in here and insert pivot charts. The really cool thing about this is that as you make any changes to the data model, all of that's going to become available right in your charts, right in your data set, and it's all going to update automatically. How cool is that?
If you're enjoying this video so far, I would really appreciate if you could like the video. Lets me know I'm doing a good job and I'm on the right track and bringing you the best content every week. Next up is Solver. This is your optimization powerhouse, and Solver is going to take what-if analysis and that kind of calculation up to the next level. It's going to find solutions to resource allocation problems. Think about scheduling labor. Think about how you put money into different capital projects. It's going to optimize decisions when given constraints like budgets, deadlines, resources. It's a great planning tool. It can simplify tough planning tasks like project schedules or financial balancing. And it takes the guesswork out of complex problems by using a logical approach and removing any kind of emotion or anything else from the process. So now let's go ahead and open up Solver. And so what we want to do is we want to set an objective first. So this is going to be the single cell and how we want it to land. So I have here, I'm going to work on a schedule for these employees and how many hours we can have each of them work. Okay, we have our Monday to Sunday and our 10 employees and the total. And my goal is to minimize overtime while meeting the needs of scheduling for each employee and meeting kind of the minimum hours required to run every single day. So my goal is to take cell K17, which is my total overtime, and I want to minimize it. You can also maximize it, set a value. So this is how you can run, if you want to grow your revenue, you can set revenue scenarios. You can go to a specific value. It's a very advanced version of something like GoalSeek. And I want to do that by changing variable cells here. So these are the cells that are variable that I'm going to change. And then I want to put in my constraints. So these are the restrictions on what can or can't happen. So the first constraint we want to add, since we're working with labor hours and so we don't want to schedule people partial hours, we need to set that we want everything to be a specific integer. So we're going to go ahead and add our first constraint. We're going to say we want these cells to be an integer. So the constraint is that they all must be a specific number. Hit OK, and that's been added. The next thing we want to do, so then we want to set how many hours we need to run the operation. So Monday through Friday, we need at least 40 hours. So let's go ahead and add that constraint. So Monday through Friday's total needs to be greater than or equal to 40. There's that. Now we'll add another one that's Saturday and Sunday because it's busier. We need to go ahead and have at least 60 hours. All right, so now we said everything has to be an integer. And then on the weekdays, we need at least 40 hours. And on this weekends, we need at least 60 hours. The next constraint is that our minimum shift length is 6 hours and our maximum shift length is 10 hours. So we want to go ahead and add both of those. So they must be greater than or equal to 6. And then the same area must be less than or equal to 10. Okay, so now we're setting in kind of the bounds. We're saying how many hours we need each day. We're saying that they need to be integers. We're saying what shift length our team can work. So now the last thing we're going to do is we're going to say that employees 7, 8, 9, and 10 are minors, and they can't work Monday through Friday. They can only work Saturday and Sunday. So let's go ahead and put that last constraint in. So these employees can't work Monday through Friday because of school, and this must be equal to 0. All right, so we've got our constraints in. Now we're going to use a solving method. There's nonlinear, simplex, LP, evolutionary, but what we're going to do here, because this is just a pretty straightforward one, we're going to use GRG nonlinear, which is the default. Then we'll go ahead and hit solve and see what happens. And here's our result. Now that Solver's done all of its math in the back end, it found a solution to the problem that meets all of our constraints. We'll go ahead and hit OK. Clean up this formatting just a little bit. And here is the schedule for our team. So this is the hours that everyone needs to work, and we've minimized it down to 28 hours of overtime, primarily because we need them to work a little bit more earlier in the week. If you're enjoying this video, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell. I post brand new long-form videos every single Monday, and I don't want you to miss a thing. For our last tool, it's Analysis ToolPak. This is the Swiss Army knife of statistical tools, again, built right into Excel. This is going to take the basic functions like correlation from Excel up to the next level with a lot of detailed statistical analysis tools. It can perform advanced analysis, advanced regression, trend forecasting. It can test hypotheses. You can quickly generate statistical reports on your data sets. It's going to simplify complex data insights for better decision making. And most importantly for forecasting, it's going to be perfect for identifying patterns and trends in your financial and operational data. Now let's take a look at Analysis ToolPak. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to do a moving average to smooth out a trend over time to better understand the direction the business is heading and inform our forecast. We're going to go ahead and pull a pivot in. I've already called this pivot table data, so we can just pull it in by name. All right, and this is going to be what we need. So we're going to pull in our weeks. Let's pop those up to the columns. We'll put our actual amount in the values, and we'll put our categories here. So what we want to look at is coffee sales and food sales. And let's understand how both of these are trending over time. Go ahead, we'll pull it down to weeks. I want to take this out of the pivot table just to make it easier to work with Analysis ToolPak. All right, and there we go. Let's just make sure everything is sized so we can read it. I'm also just going to quickly separate these out because I'm going to want to build charts later and I want to make sure I have room. So this is coffee sales, and this is going to be coffee sales smooth, and that's food sales. And that's going to be food sales smooth. All right, so then we're going to go up to data. We're going to go to our data tab. We're going to go to data analysis, and we want to go to moving average. So this is going to be our input range. We'll go to the end of the data set. Our interval, so we're going to do an interval of 4 weeks. This is the number of periods you want it to smooth over. So we're going to do 4 weeks. Remember, you will not get a result for the first 4 weeks because it has nothing to smooth. And then for our output range, we're just going to come back here, pop it right there, hit OK, and then it goes to work. And look how fast that was. So now we have our smoothed out average, which gives a better idea of the trend over time. Let's come and do the same thing down here. We had data analysis ToolPak. We'll do our moving average. Select our data set. And then for our output range, we're going to come back and put it in the same spot. Output range is set. And there's our moving average, just like magic. Then we can come down here, pull in the whole data set, and we can just chart this on a line chart. And there it is. So this is our chart over time. A little bit hard to look at. So this gives you a better idea of the trend over time. You can see that the actual coffee sales are just all over the place, but by smoothing it out, we're able to get a better view of what's actually happening. We have kind of a mid-year and an end-of-year downturn, and overall, it does look like sales are starting to slip, and this is not something that you could have easily seen just looking at the trend. And there are so many functions that you can use in here. There's everything. You have ANOVA, correlation, descriptive statistics. You can build histograms, moving average like we just did, regression, sampling. Really, all those things you learn in statistics are all built right in here, and this is just a way to supercharge Excel and get a lot of this value out. There's 2 things I really want you to take away from this video. First, please don't forget that these 4 plugins are built right into Excel. You don't need to download anything. You don't need to spend any money. You just need to check a box and they're ready to go. And second, these plugins are easy to use. There's a lot of advanced features. You can get really fancy, but the basics that will save you most of the time, they are built right in. You can save hundreds of hours a year just from these 4 plugins alone. And again, without spending a dime. So please don't waste this opportunity. That's all for today. I'll catch you in the next video. Until then, this is Mike signing off from F9 Finance. Cheers.